Allow me to introduce to you all my most loyal and long-lasting friend, Bob the common Pleco. You may also know him as a suckermouth catfish, and they're quite popular within the aquarium trade. I got him at around 2000 or 2001, when he was just a wee baby boy, and he would live the first 15 years of his life in this aquarium, which was far too small for him and was shared with far too many other fish. Because I was an idiot child who did not know how to properly look after these animals, my care routine for Bob involved placing one of these Pleco wafers in his tank every day or so, and allowing my dad to clean the aquarium. Then, as I grew older, I apparently also grew more mature, as my father would not continue to clean my fish tank, claiming it was my responsibility. So I did what any self-respecting teenager with a fish tank they got when they was a child would do. Around 5 years later, the aquarium had been cleaned maybe -3 times, all the fish were dead and never found the bodies of some of them, and I was so neglectful, the effort of just putting food in the tank was seen as such an exhausting exercise that I just wouldn't do it some days. Side note, don't get your kids fish as a pet unless you are willing to be the one to take care of them in the future, cause you don't know what they're gonna be like as they grow older, they might lose interest, and at that point the fish are just going to be neglected. But the important thing here is Bob survived all of that. The filthy water, dead fish, and cheap food. He tanked through everything. Then in 2017 or so, I grew a conscience and actually cared to improve his living standards and upgraded the aquarium. I even got properly into the fish keeping hobby at this time. I had a channel and everything. No, I won't tell you what it's called. And while Bob is unfortunately a little stunted in size due to the small tank he originally lived in, he's around 20 years old and I'd guess only measures about 30 centimeters in length, which is rather short for his species. He appears to be in really good health, and I've even upgraded his care further as he currently resides in a 250-litre aquarium. And I don't want to hear any comments about how depressing this tank currently looks. I had loads of plants in there before, but they kept dying, it's not my fault. Thus ends the lore of Bob the common Pleco, a story I told you to demonstrate one thing: Plecos are goddamn immortals. And that is a massive, massive problem. Because you see, there is an awful trend in the fish keeping community. People will buy fish when they're really, really small, not realizing how massive they will grow. Or they believe in the myth that the fish will only grow to the size of the aquarium. And as a result of their popularity in the hobby, common Plecos may as well be the poster child for this issue. As you know, my solution to this problem was to do absolutely nothing for years and then decide to be a responsible person and take care of this animal. Other people's solution is a little bit more final, as they would release their pets into the wild, dumping them into the nearest body of water they could find. The consequences of this action will vary depending on your location. If you were to do it over here in England, for example, all you'd have is a dead fish within a few days, because they're a tropical species, meaning they need a water temperature of around 26 to 30 degrees Celsius. However, if you were to do so in, I don't know, let's say Lake Julian of North Carolina, a lake suffering from thermal pollution making the water temperature higher than it should be, then you have just created an invasive species. An invasive species is basically any animal that was taken from its natural habitat and introduced to a foreign one with a similar enough climate to where they can set up a permanent population. And all of this is usually done as a result of humans, because of course it is. Now admittedly, in rare instances, the invasive animal won't cause any issue to the native flora and fauna, either because they can't acclimate well enough to thrive, or because they fit some kind of niche which doesn't disturb the overall food chain in the area. But more often than not, when they arrive, they have disastrous consequences. Think of cases like the cane toads of Australia, the grey squirrels of England, the green iguanas of Florida, the Burmese pythons of Florida, the lionfish of Florida, or the common pleco, mainly found in Florida, and the one we're going to be looking at. Yeah, that's right, if you haven't already guessed it, this entire video is going to be about a fish. Because the bramble one was just far too exciting, we have to tone it down a little bit. So the common pleco's invasive range is actually pretty large. They're not just limited to American waters, being found in Vietnam, Thailand, Bangladesh, India, the Middle East, basically anywhere where the climate is similar to their place of origin, that being South America, has some semblance of a problem with this fish. In terms of how long they have been an invasive species, the earliest example I could find was in 1962 in the San Antonio River. However, it seems that it's been in the last 30 years or so that they've become a real nuisance. Though I did spend a sizable amount of time searching, I couldn't find any agreed upon numbers of invasive plecos, that being worldwide or localized. But given the fear scientists have of the damage this fish will inevitably cause, and images like this floating around showing dozens upon dozens of them, I think it's safe to say they are thriving in sizable numbers, at least in some areas. For the sake of this video, I'm mainly going to be centralizing it around America and their problem with the invasive pleco, solely for the reason that a large portion of my audience are from America and I want to appease them. Oh, also, while you're here, why don't you subscribe? Only a small number. Anyway, just before we dive into the impact of God's favourite mistake, I need to complete a small little side quest. It's in relation to where these fish originate from, that being the Amazon River Basin of South America. Cause I know damn well there's gonna be one little nerd in the comment section who feels the need to educate us with insightful knowledge that would actually be useful for this video and for the viewers. Like a loser, and them with their stupid little glasses are gonna point out that Bob is not actually a common pleco. That distinction actually goes to Hypostomus plecostomus, my favourite combination of scientific words of all time. And in the imaginary unknown world of smart people, that fish is actually referred to as the common pleco. Bob the common pleco is actually a Amazon sailfin pleco, or a whatever the goddamn hell this is. I'm not gonna say it because it will probably put a curse upon my family. Regardless, this is the species that is quite common, haha, as an invasive threat. And while they'll be the ones we're mainly looking at, I'm still going to refer to them as the common pleco or just the pleco. Bob is practically going to be speaking on behalf of his entire family line. Okay, all well and good, we're totally on the same page now, so let's finally look at why Bob's family is such a problem, a problem, if you will. The issue is, he and his kind are literally built different in ways that propel them leagues above any of their competition in the foreign waters they've invaded. First, foremost, and the biggest issue they pose is their ability to, quite terrifyingly, completely clear an area of resources. If any of you have ever owned a Bob, then you will know in the aquarium hobby they are advertised as algae eaters, which is a goddamn lie, by the way. This fat bastard over here has never eaten a single piece of algae in his life. The closest he's ever come to cleaning the tank is to look at a piece of algae and be like, yes, algae. And then do nothing. Anyway though, yes, in the wild, common plecos are grazers. That's what that specialized sucker mouth is for, to graze on basically anything they can find. Whether it be algae, plants, dead fish, fish eggs, or even manatees, whatever they come across is fair game. And these guys really do subscribe to the sin of gluttony. It's never a small amount with them, it's always go big or go home. So already off the bat, if introduced into a new ecosystem, at the very best, the common pleco is going to be more competition for whatever fish are already in there which eat the same type of food. However, it's not really that simple, as the common pleco is one of the best fish in its specific niche. Not only do they eat a lot, they also eat incredibly fast, and they travel in groups, expediting the problem of overconsumption. They're also incredibly well defended, though we'll touch on that more a little bit later, and they tend to be quite aggressive with fish that try to steal their food, though that's through my own observations of looking at Bob whenever he's being fed. So it could just be something that only happens in the aquarium hobby. And then you've also got to take into account the extra stuff in their diet which adds further stress to the environment. Remember how I said they ate fish eggs? Well, not only is that another source of food that has been taken away, it also means that those same fish which are starving because they can't find any algae to eat are also losing their next generation. And then so with less other fish, that's less competition for the common plecos, allowing them to spread even further, even faster, and consume even more. They really are just like us. Oh, but don't feel too bad for the native animals, because it's gonna get a lot worse. Let me explain to you the real reason my aquarium no longer has any plants in it. It's his fault, it's him. Obviously it's him, it's going to be him. In their never-ending pursuit of consumption, plecos will uproot plants, either killing them or altering the density and variety of aquatic plant life. And then so you have fish that eat those specific plants, and yeah, you get the point. This right here is what can drive animals to extinction. It's when something arrives which just does its job far better. This then leads to them being the ones to overpopulate the rivers and lakes, while everything else gets outcompeted. This actually transitions me really nicely into the topic I know you have all been waiting for and that you all clicked on the video to see: pleco sex. See, when a mummy pleco and a daddy pleco love each other very much, the daddy pleco will go and construct a cave inside the river bank. Which, by the way, also erodes the shoreline, so not even the animals are safe. The entire ecosystem is just screwed. Once inside, the mummy pleco will lay, roughly 100 to 1,000 eggs, depending on the species. And keep in mind, there's not going to be the same animals from where they're from that will go in and eat those eggs, so a lot of them are going to hatch. And oh no, the parents aren't completely worthless. They will guard the entrance to the cave, ensuring that the offspring have an even better chance of survival. Yes, just like the noble gender reveal party, even in the process of creating life, this fish is killing the environment. Worst thing of all though, well, let's say you're a fish named Jerry, and you're now sharing your home with these armored menaces. Not only do you have to try and compete with them for food, you also have to still deal with your normal predators, and these same predators seem rather reluctant to eat the invasive pleco. In regards to the threat these things pose, the threats posed to them is probably the most important thing to determine. In their place of origin, South America, the common plecos have a lot of common predators to deal with, such as the spectacled caiman, various large species of fish, river otters, wading birds, and so much more. Plus, as you go down the food chain, you've got even smaller fish that'll eat the fry and the eggs, other fish that'll eat the adolescents, and so on and so forth. All this to say, their population is kept in check by a variety of factors, and that is something that the foreign waters they've invaded and set up a massive population distinctly lack. And the reason for that, when dumbed down, is very simple. The hostile environment they came from has caused the common pleco to evolve various defensive mechanisms. Mainly this is in the form of their incredibly durable bony plates which surround their entire body, an adaptation which isn't unique to them by any means, but it is something that is seldom seen in the waters of Florida, especially on such a large fish, so the predators there are going to be at a massive disadvantage. Plus, in addition to that, they also possess razor-sharp spines on their adipose, dorsal, and pelvic fins. happens. And keep in mind, we're adding these features onto a fish which can already achieve a decent speed boost if threatened, and has really good camouflage. And the large size of an adult Pleco completely removes some predators altogether. Now some of you might be saying, okay, well the pool is limited, yes, but I mean, alligator could eat fish, or big bird, or really big fish. American animals absolutely possess the ability to eat a Pleco, right? And it's kinda like a yes and no situation. Yes, because, yeah, alligators have been documented eating these invasive plecos. They're obviously not an issue for them. And you'll also find a few photos and videos of birds trying to eat these plecos. The no of this situation, however, is, well, it's twofold. Firstly, like I mentioned earlier, the pool of animals is just far too small to actually dent the population. But also, the defenses of the pleco do pose a significant risk. The way it works is, the predators of South America are not only far more numerous, they have also lived alongside the common pleco for eons, meaning they've evolved alongside them to hunt, catch, and kill this fish. It's the classic evolutionary arms race. But if we were to move back to North America and take a woodstock, for example, it might be a bad example, but bird experts aren't real, so there's nothing to worry about. Looking at it on the surface, you'd think it'd absolutely be able to kill a pleco, and in all honesty, it probably could and does every now and then, or maybe even quite often. But the woodstocks are native to Florida, and they've evolved to deal with that particular environment. That evolutionary arms race, the one that turned the common pleco into an armored-plated, spine-filled menace, well, not only does the woodstock have no arms to speak of, it's also been absent for that whole evolutionary thing, leaving them at a massive disadvantage when compared to other fish-eating birds from South America that were present for the whole thing. This means that the woodstock could find the armor of the pleco just far too challenging to break through and not worth the effort, so they would just leave them alone, going after their normal prey. And in a worst case scenario, the spines of the pleco could actually cause harm to the bird, which would further deter them from hunting the fish in the future. Let's look at it this way. One day, you go down to the store to pick up an orange, and you see your normal, everyday orange that you're very familiar with and always eat. But next to it, you see a fancy, exotic-looking orange, and you are like, yes, that looks very tasty. I am going to go and grab... And then it explodes! You have now lost part of your hand, are very upset and very determined not to pick that orange ever again. You're gonna stick to the ones you know are safe. That is an unbelievably stupid allegory for why the predators of Florida don't really hunt the pleco as much as they should. And again, I want to add on the fact that's not the only reason. There's also just less predators in Florida compared to South America that could actually hunt the pleco, so that's probably like a bigger contributing factor, but I mean, I couldn't leave out the orange metaphor, I'm sorry. And herein lies the biggest fundamental problem with invasive species. If the invading animal is able to take advantage of the native predators, they can just overpopulate to their heart's content and live life without concern. This then further compounds all of the challenges that the native fish are facing, which I mentioned earlier. More food is going to be eaten because the pleco can overpopulate quicker, and the shoreline is going to be further damaged at a higher rate because the plecos are breeding more because there's more of them. There is some hope in all of this, kind of. Inevitably, the ecosystem would evolve with the plecos to handle them. Predators would adapt to hunt them and take advantage of the large numbers, and eventually this fish would just be a staple part of the environment. That, though, is more of a thought experiment than anything else, and even if we say it's 100% true, how many native species are gonna go extinct before that happens? And how many different environments are gonna be affected? And yes, I did say different environments because there's one last thing that really does turn these fish from broken to, God, this thing needs a ban. That being the pleco's survivability. And you thought that story at the beginning was a complete waste of time. Well, you're actually right because I added the story in before this part. It's completely useless. Seriously though, these things are borderline immortal. They can even breathe air from the surface, so if the water quality wasn't too great or it just didn't have a lot of oxygen in it, they could just go up to the surface and grab a gulp of O2. And I'm certain some of you at least have seen this video of a zombie Pleco seemingly being revived with a few drops of water. Truth is, by hiding away in their burrows or just covering themselves in mud, they can survive a significant amount of time out of the water. So if the area they've invaded suffers a drought, they can just be vibing in the mud and then come back out once the rains return. But if you want an example of how truly insane their tolerance is, look no further, because they can live in the worst waters of all, British waters. Yeah, I didn't know this when I started writing the script, which is why I said if you dumped them in the UK waters, they would just die. But yeah, apparently we have our own invasive Pleco. So that's fun. That alone, ignoring everything else up until this point, should demonstrate how truly dangerous this fish is. This is a tropical animal from a tropical environment that needs warm waters to survive. And it can live in the UK. That is absolutely insane. Okay, update, if you're wondering why I haven't shown any, news article or data for this, it's because I literally could not find it, and that doesn't make sense, because when I was originally researching this entire project, I definitely remember seeing it and being like, that's weird, better include a section about that. But then when I went to try and get a screen grab of it a few days later, it just wasn't there, and I don't really have any good explanation for why. The only logical thing I can think of is that this is a deep state cover-up. They don't want us to know that Plecos are in the UK. I do believe we have stumbled across something that we really shouldn't have, and this may be my last upload because of it. This fish, the common Pleco, has truly evolved to be a rivers, lakes, or aquarium's perfect degenerate. So now, I think it's time we tackle arguably the biggest question of them all. What is the impact? What kind of damage overall has this fish caused? Well, firstly, we'll move our attention to the commercial side of fishing, and unfortunately, the common Pleco has not been too nice to it. They're not eaten all that often, so despite the high numbers, demand remains rather low. And due to the outcompeting of desirable catches, those ones have been in lower numbers, which has further impacted the industry. Plus, even if you did want to catch the Pleco, that's not really an easy task. You can't get them with the old line and bait like a lot of other fish. You have to either use your hands, a spear, or a net. Which, funnily enough, is actually another reason that the overpopulation of this fish has been so immense. It's because we, humans, the best killers of all, can't really stop them all that well. A 1-ton murder beast with massive horns, that's no problem for us, but a fish? Oh heavens to Betsy, no, can't handle that. But okay, the more pressing matter, what are the damages caused to aquatic life in the areas they've invaded? And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be that much. I phrased that very poorly. I meant unfortunate as in, I don't have too many answers. Let's just be clear. I, Escar Joe, do not advocate for the extinction of Floridian wildlife. According to gov.uk, a very trusted source, about 60% of biodiversity extinctions are caused by invasive animals, and given all we now know, that does make sense. But I could not find any evidence that suggests that the common Pleco has led to the extinction of any other animal whatsoever. There's a lot of noise about animals being starved out by the Plecos. I'm fairly certain I've used the phrase outcompeted about a dozen times, but as far as extinction itself is concerned, nada. Nothing. And that does, kind of make sense. Extinction is a big thing. That is endgame type stuff. And it's also a lot more complicating than just pointing at the fish and being like, him. He's the problem. He did it. Get him. There's so many different factors which can go into it, so pointing the blame on one animal, yeah, that's not gonna happen too often, though it does. Either way, I don't think we're too far off from that being a reality. I mean, the population of the Pleco, is growing by the day. It doesn't seem to be showing any signs of slowing down. So allow me to sound like a broken record one last time, but as fish get outcompeted, they're gonna become endangered, and then through endangerment, they're gonna become extinct. And it's all gonna be his fault. But as of right now, at the time of making this video, he hasn't killed anyone. Yet. Just before we end, I want to go over one last little thing, that being the title of this video and the accuracy of it. Whatever it ends up being, I am going to have the phrase most destructive fish in there somewhere or something similar at the very least because, you know, algorithm reasons. But is the common pleco actually the most destructive invasive fish? And personally, in my opinion, maybe, potentially, it could be with time. I also don't really know. Like, these guys are a challenge, yes, but there are plenty of other invasive fish which you could argue earn that title even more so. Remember, plecos are competing with other fish like the lionfish or the Asian carp. The latter so potentially dangerous, the USA has had to electrify some of its waters leading towards the Great Lakes in order to stop them from getting there and completely destroying the ecosystem. That actually doesn't demonstrate the severity of the situation enough, so let me rephrase it. The US has actually invested in infrastructure to better the lives of its people, all because of the Asian carp. So you can absolutely say they are more destructive than the common pleco ever will be, and if we go into like invasive animals as a whole, man, it's not even close. Like, where do you start? You've got feral hogs, rats, cats, and of course, you. So the most destructive invasive animal? No, not even slightly close, but the most destructive invasive fish? Maybe, but also probably not. And yes, I am deliberately leaving this at the end, so we can laugh at everyone in the comments that's like, but what about the carp? Because now we know they didn't watch the video to the end. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. Please do like and subscribe, and, you know, also make sure you write a massive paragraph about the pleco, like so many of you did in the bramble video. I'm not even kidding. Every time I went into my notifications on that video, I saw like 3 different posts, all of which like 100 characters long. I have no idea why, but YouTube seemed to only recommend that video to the people that would be most interested in it. Don't get me wrong, I really do like it. I think it's awesome to see all these like smart people come together in the comments and write up theories about brambles and sheep and whether they are predatory or whether they're not. I love it, and I want to thank all of you for commenting on that video and helping it grow to over 10k views in just a few weeks. It really does mean a lot to me, so yeah, genuinely, thank you. Bunch of goddamn nerds.